Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments Midweek Model Meet. Hopefully you like the new intro. A little bit shorter than the old one, a little bit more on brand. So I thought I'd pop that one in. And I'm going to get straight off with introducing my special guest for the evening. I did mention it in the comments, obviously, in the title. I didn't get a chance to catch up with him at Telford because he was swamped in a crowd of people at the time that I came around. And when I came around the next day, he'd already gone back to look after his brand new daughter. But can you all put your hands together for Luke from Revell?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Look at that. I can even give you. How about that? New gimmicks in StreamYard. Anyway, thanks for joining me, Luke. Great to see you. Great to actually get a chance to have a chat because I guess Telford was very busy, right?
Yes, I wasn't planning to go to Telford at all, unfortunately. My daughter was due on the 20th of October and she was a bit late. So she was very, very new by the time Telford had rolled around. So the chances of me getting there were very slim. But I, at the last minute, managed to bag my brownie points, reclaim them and get a day trip. But I was told I had to be there and back in a day, which is okay if you live down the road. But I live in Margate, so it was a bit of a trek, but well worth it to experience the show for another year. It's always useful.
Yeah, ideal for Airfix, I guess, but not so much Revell and Telford.
yeah, it's a bit of a long day. When you're dressed in blue like that, you can't walk around the hall freely. You get stopped every 10 steps, it seems.
Which is a good thing and a bad thing, of course, in different measure. But so lots of people in tonight. So good to see everybody. Thank you for joining us. And if you've got any questions or comments, as always, if you can put QQQ or CCC or question or comments in capitals, just helps me pick it out, especially as I'm going to be talking to Luke for a lot. So I may not pay as much attention to the chat as I would normally. I'm not going to call out everybody that's come in, but thank you all for coming. I'm sure you would much rather I got on and grilled Luke. I'm not going to grill Luke, obviously.
I was going to say, hopefully not grilling. As I said to you backstage, this is past my bedtime as a new father. So,
well, perhaps. I mean, I met you first when you were at Airfix at the Seeking open day at the historic helicopters site, and obviously had a very different role at Airfix. So perhaps you just want to give us a bit of, for those people who don't know, a little bit of your background, your experience at Airfix, and your sort of move to Revell and your position and responsibilities now.
Sure, yeah. So starting way back, I did a product design degree at Bournemouth University. So, links to this world quite a bit. Before that, growing up, I was always interested in aircraft. Always aircraft, helicopters. So vehicles and things like that have never really been in my interest field. When you're growing up, you never think you're going to be a researcher or a project manager for a model kit company. If you said that to your career advisor, you'd be laughed out the room. I think quite rightly, because it's so niche. So I don't think anyone can ever say they set out to get this job or a job like it. It's always just the stars aligning. So as I say, I always had this interest in aviation, partner with design and that side of it, and then did a few jobs totally unrelated to models for a few years. But I'm originally from a place called Sandwich, which is maybe 6 miles from Margate, within 10 miles. So I had always wanted to move back home from Bournemouth, where I'd done my degree and stayed for a few years. And then it just so happened at the time where I was looking to get a house, Hornby, Airfix were looking for people to fill the researcher position. And so, as I say, the stars aligned. And, it grew up down the road from the brand, used to make models there on make and paint days. So it was a dream job. and got to do some very, very cool things. One of them being the Sea King, as you mentioned there, Alex. Even got to fly in one, which is just
Nice.
The stuff of dreams, really. It was great. So I used to do all the research behind the kits, and I still do that a bit here at Revell, but eventually the Revell job came up, and it was more PM based, so an overarching role rather than being on the ground, as it were. So I'm now the project manager or product manager for aircraft, helicopters, and real space at Revell, managing the kits from inception all the way through to being on the shelf, and obviously afterwards as well, to a certain degree. So a very potted history there, but that's all quite relatively recently. I'm still a young guy. I mean, the grey hairs and the receding hair, though I might not attest to that, but this is all within the last 5 years in terms of career history. But I've managed to pack it in, it seems.
Yeah. Well, apparently, Simon said Sandwich has a great golf course.
It has two. It has Prince's, and then it has Royal St George's, very exclusive Royal St George's, where they play the Open. Nice. We used to rent out our house there's no fixed period, but we would rent out our house to the Sky TV crews that needed to descend on the town.
I know Sandwich well from Pfizer.
Yes.
Pfizer had a huge, it was the major employer back in the day. Not so much now. The last time I saw Pfizer on TV, it was used as a stage in a Deer and Brown thing. It was, which is weird because those of you who don't know, Pfizer, big pharmaceutical company, had a huge research and production site in Sandwich, and that grew from the 1990s. It was a historical site, and they put a huge new thing up, and now it's pretty much deserted.
It's been taken over by a lot of small businesses. When it comes to TV, more film, World War Z was filmed there as well with Brad Pitt years ago. In strangely, Hornby resided there for a time as well in the old Pfizer building, Discovery Park, as it was then called.
I didn't know that.
So rather than being one big company, it turned into a business park essentially at that point.
Yeah, which gives you an idea of how big Pfizer was before. It could become a business park now for many. Okay, so in terms of, obviously, Airfix, you were the kind of, I hate to use the phrase, but rivet counter, because it's got negative associations, but really, especially in a research role, that's a really good thing, right? Moving to Revell, obviously PM, more of an overarching role, as you say. What would be kind of your goals when you joined Revell to start with? Did you have some highlight things that you kind of wanted to do, or was it very much get into the role and see how things went?
Yeah, so when I made the jump over to Revell, I wasn't going in blind. I knew it was a bit of a challenge in terms of where the brand was perceived to be, but it had so much potential. It's something everyone's grown up with. It just needed a bit of nurturing in some places. So there was some quick, easy wins that I identified pretty quickly. But one thing I did when I first joined is to sort of sit down and assess what my thoughts were, but also speak to industry. I think I spoke to you, Alex. I spoke to quite a few other people because I didn't want to just come in and start trying to stamp my image onto the brand. I wanted to make sure, firstly, that my opinions were shared. I don't want to start making big changes that everyone goes, no, this is worse, way worse. That's the worst case. But you always want to verify what you're thinking, and also just listen to the community. So I sat down for, it must have been 50 or 60 interviews in the end, speaking to people, what they felt could be improved upon, what was good, all the normal stuff, really. And essentially took it from there. There was a lot of shared things that came out of that. So boxes, the feel that we were a bit too corporate, being a bit aloof as a sort of company image was one of the things. Amongst, Reboxing kits that were slightly older, and sort of that mix within our assortment, and trying to rectify that. So some things that could instantly be rectified, some that were going to take a lot longer. That's, we're a container ship at the end of the day. It's going to take a long time to turn it around. but we've also got such huge reach. That's one of the big things for me when I joined Revell. We're a truly international company. We have offices all over the world and have such potential in that regard that we can, if we turn it around, if we get it right, we can get it really right. From a company perspective, that means making more money. From my side, it's better models for everyone. Because I'm not the money side.
Revell originally, of course, started off as a US company. And now, of course, it's a German company.
Yeah, with a US brand.
Crossed the Atlantic, and you're now part of the Revell Carrera brand. Of course, is much larger than Revell itself. You have a private investment company, so there's a lot of parallels. I think a lot of people have drawn those conclusions and parallels with the Hornby journey. Similar sort of reinventing itself. Maybe not reinventing itself, but reinvigorating, perhaps, is a better phrase. My personal experience of Revell, I would say it kind of has. I would say Revell is responsible for some of my worst modeling experiences and some of my best modeling experiences. They kind of lie on both fringes. I think, especially when I was into 1/72nd scale, Luftwaffe was kind of my bag, I guess, when I second came back into modeling. And I think that can be summarized by two kits. One is the Revell TA152, which I think is truly one of the oldest and worst kits I've ever made. And I was very pleased, though, that I'd managed to make a decent model of it from what was in the box. And then the other was, I'll pick one, it's the Revell Focke-Wulf FW200C Condor, which actually I think you've just re-released. Well, yes. I know you have, because I've got some in my shop now. And that time in the sort of mid-90s to early noughties, where, again, Revell kind of went through a bit of a renaissance. They did a lot of kits, which, again, we're seeing back on the shelves, which is great. The P series, the Luftwaffe 46 sort of stuff, Blommenvoss BV222, a lot of those kits, which for the time I think were, pushing the envelope. So I kind of have this bittersweet experience, and I think a lot of people out there also have that bittersweet experience where they've done really good Revell models and have really good memories of those. And Monogram, of course, being part of the brand as well. And then they also have those kits which stick with them for perhaps not so good reasons. And I think, again, parallels with Hornby, with Airfix exist there as well. So that's kind of my history and background. And I guess people in the chat, if you guys want to comment in as well, please do. But you mentioned a few things about improvements there. And obviously, the quick win, the low-hanging fruit, boxes. Revell used to do top opening boxes. They went to end opening boxes. People hate opening boxes. And over the past couple of months or so, we've started to see, again, flip top boxes, top opening boxes coming up. Just talk us through that a little bit. How difficult is it to get that change in a big corporation?
Very, very is the answer. But because one of the big obstacles is cost. If you think the amount of products, the amount of box sizes, for example, that we have, if you even go down to the logistics, the amount of die cuts that you have for the packaging, you have to chuck all the old ones out and start again, essentially. And there are one-off costs with a size of box. For example, K43-1 is an internal code we have. It's what you'll see the Sea Hurricane, the Condor, and other things in that big box. You're talking, €1,000 plus per box, just for the format. And then obviously you have the design cost to redesign every single graphic aspect. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the range as a whole for Revell, we're talking hundreds of products. It's a big investment from the company. And you have to convince them. You have to say, well, what's the business case? there's going to be no immediate return. By changing the boxes, we can't charge £20 more each time. But obviously, we know from a modeler side, the reputation, the user experience is so much nicer having a top opening box. So there was compromises made. I came in wanting lid and tray, which is the sort of industry standard, and obviously a lot stronger. The side opening aspect was the thing we really wanted to solve. So by going to these flip boxes, we immediately solve that. You've got the top opening, you can use it as storage. You can use both halves if you need, cut the top off if you really want to use it as a storage box. The strength is another for the box, because we use a single folded piece of card. By going to this top opening version, where it sort of hinges, you double the thickness essentially because you have overlapping portions.
Yep.
So for most box sizes, that solved the strength problem straight away, apart from the very biggest box, which is something we're still working on a bit, to try and get it a bit stronger on the rear edge where it hinges, because there's no double thickness there. So something we're aware of. But yeah, long and short of it, it's very difficult to convince them because it's a lot of money. But it's been done. It just takes a while for it to filter through, as you can expect. As we bring new products to market, they'll all be in the new style, and we're slowly working through all the old boxes as well, because we're actually updating the packaging design throughout. One thing we didn't previously do when we've updated the design is go back and change boxes. So you'd see a mix of blue boxes, black boxes, and now the very new sort of black style. We've actually dedicated the graphic designer to doing it all within the year. So we should be finishing that in a couple months. So that, not immediately, not within the next 2 months, but over the next year, all the old stock should phase out. And then it should be a one consistent style in the top opening boxes, apart from the very smallest boxes. They'll remain side opening. We're talking what we call F21-1, which is 210 mil wide, the very smallest 144 stuff, really, and 72nd fighters. But yeah, apart from that, everything's top opening, either in the folded form, or if it's bigger, I've just seen you pour Meteor onto your desk. That's an internal code we call D47. That's the smallest top opening box. So that means it's lid and tray.
I'm trying to see if I can see D47 written anywhere.
No, you won't. Don't.
So that was a handy segue, because, of course, I do have a Meteor here, and you guys can see this thing is absolutely huge, and it is a top opening box. You can see it's not a flip top box, that is a proper top opening box. I have had a look inside. I've not done an unboxing on this yet, because we've been very blessed as modelers in the past month in having Airfix, obviously, with the 124 scale BF109. We've had ICM release the 148 scale Handley Page Hampton, and we've had you guys release the 132nd scale Gloucester Meteor, first edition. So it's kind of, you guys are really unkind to people's wallets, because that's a lot of outlay just before Christmas. Yes. But obviously, nicely planned, nice to have such choice. 3 different scales, 3 different subjects, bit of something for any kind of air model, I think. 172nd scale, guys, well, you've got plenty of choice already. So let's talk about the Meteor for a little bit then, because I have my own opinions on it, which I haven't shared with anybody yet, but I will in the rest of this. So talk us through that journey, because this was announced as a release for last year originally, I think, before you moved to Airfix, was that? From Airfix?
Yeah, I think it was actually the year before that.
Really?
It had been in the works for a very long time. So it had been announced at Nuremberg Toy Fair, I believe 2023, for release later in that year. And then I joined in 2024 in about April, I think. So, a year and 4 months has gone by that point, and nothing had happened. So I came in knowing it had already been announced at quite a high price point, I think, was the initial reaction from everyone, without much detail for what was necessitating that high price point. But doing away with that, we had announced it as an F3, which I saw as being quite limiting in terms of future releases. The F8, FR9 has so many marking options, so many variations. It seemed like a no-brainer to switch, and that decision was made all the easier when you're not having to scrap anything. You've not invested too much money.
Yeah.
I think there was a whole lot of stuff going on in the background at Revell at the time that meant that work hadn't started. They'd sort of announced prematurely and then realised, oh no, we haven't done it yet. So thankfully, it meant that we could swap the version. I know some people were hoping for a wartime Meteor, but when we look at it from a commercial side, there's just so much more in terms of legs for releases when it comes to the post-war Meteors, because of the amount of countries that use them, European and also South America, and also where you can go from an F8, FR9. But I won't go any further than that. I'll let people speculate.
Yeah, they've been teased with that one. Yeah, because the Meteor wartime. Famously, we didn't want to use Meteors over occupied or potentially occupied territories in case one was crashed and was captured, despite the fact that 262s and Arado 234s were flying around. The Germans had developed a competing technology, but still, they weren't really in any space to retro engineer anything at that point. But they really operated in very limited numbers in very limited scenarios in World War II. So its day really was that post-war era, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the frontline fighter for the RAF, even though it never really saw much service or action, I should say. It obviously saw more action over in Korea with the Australians. One of the schemes included in the kit. But yeah, generally it was a fighter for peacetime. So I had someone commenting, well, why didn't you show explosions and all these mad action things happening on the box front? Well, it doesn't reflect the truth of the scenario, really. Unless I do obviously an Australian one, I can do that. But I'm a lad from Kent, and that's on the box front there is a 41 Squadron Biggin Hill jet flying over the South Downs or the Beachy Head. So a no-brainer for me.
Yes, because I think some people originally were just like, "Oh, the White Cliffs of Dover." That's not, and it's like, no, that's not quite where you are.
Yeah, it's near enough for our international viewers. It's the White Cliffs, but just not of Dover.
Yeah, but I think and this goes with the Hunter box art, which was announced today as well. Some really nice box art on these new releases.
We try our best. Giving good briefs to the artist is always useful. It gives you something to talk about. Is there a reason we've picked that scene in particular? And working with a variety of different artists means that you're able to do some really cool things. And when you've got a big range, it's useful to have multiple artists because you haven't got a single bottleneck essentially. So the guy who did the Hunter and the Meteor is Vincenzo Orletta. And then we have Egbert Friedel, Andre Derados, quite a few artists doing work for us. Because great work in different styles as well.
Yeah, and I know that so some people believe that box art doesn't make a difference. As a retailer, I beg to differ. Like books in a bookshop, it shouldn't make a difference, really, to what's inside, but it does. A nice, attractive piece of box art catches the eye. Now, yes, a dedicated modeler who really knows their stuff, yes, it probably might not. But I think also we like box art, right? I like seeing. I think the standards now are very high, and when you see art that isn't quite up to standard, it does kind of give you a bit of a, I don't know, almost like a lack of trust in what's inside the box. So that little bit of hesitance from a personal point of view, at least. And then I'm probably more diligent in my research, which is probably a good thing. But just on the schemes there. So this is the decal sheet for the Meteor.
Yeah.
So one of the things I was quite impressed with is the range of schemes. You get a really nice range, and I think that was displayed at Telford. I think you had one in each each of the schemes?
Yeah, I think at Telford we had the 41, so the box front scheme. We had the FR9 in the Suez colours, and then the Belgian one as well, which is nice, bright and colourful. So, but there are two others. So there's 245 Squadron as part of air-to-air refuelling trials that took place very early in the Meteor's life, and also the Aussie scheme, which allows you to mount the rockets as if it were in Korea. Hailstorm. We had some people say, "Oh, that's the one everyone does." It's the one everyone does because everyone wants to build it. So, from a we could pick a niche one of the aircraft that's not so often modelled, but why not do the one everyone knows?
Yeah.
from a sales perspective, and let aftermarket people like Red Roo for Australia, they'll pick that up straight away. I know that because I was working with them as well. So, yeah. When we come to pick schemes like that, we want to be hitting multiple different bases. Having a continental scheme, so a Belgian scheme in there is important because we're a primarily European-based company.
It's also a really nice scheme.
Yes, yeah, that does help.
Yeah.
When it came to picking that, it was between the Belgian Target Tug or one of the Dutch display jets.
That is. I mean, it goes with the theme of the channel. I mean, not quite the right orange, but it's not far off. Yeah. You're certainly not going to miss it, are you?
No. In terms of schemes, we were actually slightly worried we weren't going to fit it all onto the decal sheet. We thought we might have to split it into two separate sheets in the end, but we managed to fit it. I think it's A3, might even be slightly bigger.
It is. It is definitely slightly. It is bigger than A. Well, that's. It's basically A3. It is huge, and
I think it's pretty much the maximum size cartograph can do is A3. So, we're very happy with
tiny stenciling.
This is the thing. You get people moaning that we've included too many stencils, but if we didn't include them, you get the opposite. So, better to include them, and people can choose whether to use them.
You can please some of the people all the time, and all the people some of the time, but not both.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of research went into those stencils. Juanita Franzi, who did the decal artwork, was fantastic. We were climbing over every airframe we could find that still had original markings. Luckily, I could visit not the most original, but the prone Meteor is great because it's still in its original paint. So you can get a lot of stencils that are common across a lot of the Meteors, but you'll find that depending on what jet you're sort of modelling, you might look at pictures and go, well, it doesn't have half of those stencils. Yep, that's the problem. It just depended when they were repainted, what was painted over and what wasn't, or what was reapplied. So, as I say, we just try do everything and then let people choose.
And one of the choices that, again, I wasn't convinced of when this was first announced, it being, it's called a first edition. I think it's called first edition.
Yes.
Is that right? Yes, first edition. Much like I think it was originally announced as a platinum edition, or the top level of kits that you do, which I think was seen as a justification for the high price point, because I think it was around about 150 euros or 150 pounds when it was first announced, something around that, which seemed very high. Talking about a book and things, and it's just like, well, is a book going to get it? What was the kind of thinking of putting that sort of premium edition out rather than starting with a base version and then perhaps working and offering an all singing all dancing one later?
Well, so firstly, Revell have always or quite recently been trying to do these high price point platinum editions, first editions, limited editions, whatever you might call them. From a business perspective, being able to sell a higher price item and less of them is easier for us from a sort of turnover perspective when you look at it purely from a monetary side. But the key is value to the consumer, which I don't think we were always delivering on. So when I joined, essentially was told we want to do this as a first edition. The price point is this much. And I said, no, you're past the £100 point, and it's just not going to sell in the way that you want. There's this psychological barrier about £100. So in the UK, the Meteor is 109.99, but by the time it gets to some shops, obviously we know certain chains discount quite a bit. You were under £100 at that point. But from my side, I was essentially, we're doing this first edition. It's an interesting thing. It's the first edition. We've never done it before. A bit like a book. That's what it's based on, the first edition sort of title. And the idea is that obviously you get all these extras. You can have everything you need in that box to get going. If you're a really serious modeler, you've got etch, you've got masks, obviously the base kit, and also some nice extras such as the book, the poster. So the idea from my side is to offer as best value products as I could. So it meant bringing the price point down to where it is. And essentially, it doesn't sound like rocket science, every item in that box you should be able to buy separately and it come out more expensive than what we're offering it as, which hasn't always been the case before, believe it or not. So, when you look at the value of that product, Duke Hawkins' book is between £20 and £30, depending where you get it. The etch, you're probably looking at 10. The mask set, between sort of 5 and 10. Poster, you could put a value of about £5 on. And then you look at the base value of the kit, and you're getting a very good package at that point. I think the original release was due to be light and sound. I'm not sure how many modelers, how much mass market appeal that has generally within the serious modeling community, which is where we're pitching the Meteor at. So, quickly did away with that. I think that would have been a huge mistake. It has its place. We've done the Technic kit before. But in terms of a major release, I think you would limit it quite a bit by starting off with that. You could go to that eventually, but
to give you one piece of Gemba evidence from my own personal experience, I've had a Revell Technic light and sound 32nd scale Spitfire in my shop since I opened, and it hasn't sold. I haven't sold one.
I think it's a niche thing,
It's very niche, And I get quite a lot of people with children who are kind of like, that children Christmas present, the big project that you do with your dad or your uncle or whatever. I think is that kind of, the target market, and not sold it yet. So
exactly. From our side, the first edition with the Meteor, it's an interesting prospect. Trying something we hadn't done before, because the traditional way would be to release the standard edition and then bring the special one later. But doing it this way does build a certain amount of rarity around it. Definitely a clamour to get there first. The fact it's limited to 3,000 pieces, which we sold out of in record time for Revell, which is great. Obviously, you can probably still get it at shops, but within Revell, we're sold out. So it seems to have worked. It was a bit of an experiment from our side, but also it was doing all the work around the Meteor to build publicity, something we hadn't done too much of before, which was left to Muggins and obviously the team to try and push it as much as possible, because we're very proud of it as a product. But that doesn't mean anything if it doesn't sell. So, going on shows to talk to people, put a face to the brand, and really start promoting what we're doing at Revell, what we're trying to do.
Yeah. I must say, as I say, I wasn't convinced by the strategy. Like yourself, I've sat in a lot of strategy meetings over the year, a lot of, product stuff about release and, where you're trying to target and stuff. And, I couldn't imagine sitting in that meeting, again, at the original price point and saying, I'm going to make a success of this. I have to say, I was wrong. I think the release as it is, I think with the price point as it is, as you say, you can get it under £100 in UK. I sell it so I have 3 left in the shop. They're £95. It's of course I got one myself because I wasn't going to let it pass by. I wanted to be one of the 3,000. But as you say, you got your masking set. You have actually very nice. If I can just put that up a little bit, too many spiders. The photo etch is pre-painted, so you've got that there, which is really nice, which I wasn't expecting. And one of the things I really wasn't expecting is the book is actually fantastic. The quality of this, just to give you some idea, guys, of what you get in here. You get all of the internal pictures. There's pictures of the instruments, of the ejection seat, various different pieces, flaps, undercarriage. This is basically all of your research in a book included in the kit, which I think is, again, I didn't think it would necessarily work. Again, at that higher price point, it wouldn't convince me to get the kit. But at the price point you've gone for, I think the added value that you've presented, it is an easy tip over. It's the same sort of size. I think it's interesting actually because you've got the Hampton, the Meteor that you've released, and the 109. They're all about the same size, in terms of the finished kit. They're all, the 109 and the Meteor are about the same price. The Hampton obviously is quite a bit less because it's a 48 scale kit. So there's that sort of, even though it's the same sort of size and it is crowned with detail, you've got that kind of slight reduction for that piece. For me, and again, this is only personal, I think this kit is a better value proposition. You talked about value than the BF 109. And that is coming from somebody who, the 109 is more my shtick. I mentioned Luftwaffe, World War II aircraft. The Meteor has never really been, it's a bit of a slab-winged, slightly stumpy thing for me. But you've got the Derwent engines in there. I think, last year you showed them displayed separately because you didn't have the tool of the actual aircraft, I think, at Telford in.
Yeah, I think they were 3D prints the year before. So
they were 3D prints, yeah. Okay.
The one thing I should say with the Meteor is from joining in April 24 to getting it on the shelves in November 25, that is breakneck speed for a plastic model kit from starting development to getting it on the shelves. It's a record for me, the designer who's involved, who's been working on kits for years and years and years. So we're just so proud of it as a piece of tooling as well, because it's a real step up. I think people will agree in terms of what we've delivered. It's a really, really nice project. But when it came to that value proposition you're talking about, the aftermarket deciding what to go in the box was quite tricky. In the end, the sort of philosophy around it is to offer that one-stop shop sort of experience, as I was saying. You shouldn't have to go out and buy aftermarket. Obviously, people will. They want resin wheels or whatever. But for the majority of people, it gives you everything. You don't even need to go on Google. You've got your book for your research material and all the masks, and you can have a poster to set the mood in the office if you really want.
And the pilot.
And the pilot, yeah, we were really keen to show off. We have a sculptor that we use that we had to convince him to sculpt in injection molding because obviously they're so used to sculpting for resin where there's no constraints. Yeah. So it was a big team effort to try and engineer through the pilot, essentially, trying to compromise it in a way that it will come out of a two-piece mold, but still look pretty convincing. I think we achieved that. Obviously, it meant splitting him into 5 pieces, if you include 2 heads.
Yeah, he's got separate arms, hasn't he?
Yeah, 2 arms, a body, 2 heads. He only has 1 head at a time, though. Don't worry. So, trying to bring some of the design philosophy, research sort of thoroughness that have been on projects that I've worked on before to what I'm doing at Revell. So you'll see there's so many options in that Meteor kit. The pilot's head being a prime example where we have 2 heads, one for early flying sort of leather skull cap, and then a Mark 1 bone dome helmet that they wore sort of from the mid-50s onwards. And that carries on throughout the kit where you have different ejection seat pull handles, obviously big and little intakes, early, late ailerons. It goes on and on. I won't bore you. You can look on the website.
Yeah, and I must say, if you see the box, so one criticism of Revell kits in the past, this is the depth of the box. And one criticism of Revell kits in the past, and well, actually, even of the Sea Hurricane and things like the, just thinking the Star Wars stuff, the Mandalorian Starfighter stuff, is you have this big box and then like 60% of it is air. The Meteor is packed. I mean, I opened it and it's full to the brim with plastic. Well, and the book and everything else, but there is no room in that box. Which
and this is, again, as I said, when we interviewed people at the start when I joined Revell, something people have mentioned time and time again, and I think there was a philosophy a while ago whereby the bigger the product looked on the shelf, the better it was, the more deserving of a high price point. But that only goes as far as the cover. People are judging it by the cover, as we were talking about with Box Up. But as soon as they open that box, if it's only half full, they're going to be bitterly disappointed and feel a bit short-changed. So,
the overriding feeling is disappointment. Yes,
yes, yeah, and obviously we're all about user experience, trying to make it the best thing. From the moment you see it on the shelf, open it. You don't want any point in the user journey to be disappointment. You want it to be ecstatic excitement throughout, and having this premium unboxing feel was something that was said to me over and over, but quite often what we do to have that premium feel was to have an insert that held one piece, or it held a book, but I said it's much better just to have a full box. That's what we want, is just a very heavy, full, it's not rattling around. Obviously, that limits damage if it can all be sort of packed together nicely. So much so I was a bit worried we weren't going to fit it all in the box when I started packing them with the poly bags, because that adds a bit of thickness. But I think we got it just right. And obviously, we'll try and roll that out to all new releases. And where we're redoing boxes, as I was saying about earlier, reducing size where we can. If it is a box that rattles around, or plastic that rattles around in the box, there's no reason with this big packaging refresh sort of push that we have going on that we can't sort of address that. So we're very happy with that.
Good. I mean, I think as I say, I was very impressed. I think it's if this heralds what, if you like, the new outlook is for Revell, at least in the air and space, or real space rather than all that Star Wars stuff. If it's kind of heralding what is to come, then, and I think we're going to talk about a couple of other things which are coming, but I think I'm as excited as I was back in the late 90s. Going to Telford when you had then they had a big like glass booth and thing. It was huge. So if this is the Revell is back kind of statement, then I'm pretty impressed so far, Luke, I must say.
Hopefully this is us planting our flag. This is the benchmark from where we go from now. Especially when it comes to what I'm working on, we only ever want to improve. So we definitely have some big projects in the works for the next couple of years to build on the Meteor's success. Watch this space.
Just to echo that, couple of comments from the chat. Simon says, "Well done to the team at Revell."
Thank you.
We have a couple of others. One was no future Meteor variant chat. That's all my questions sunk then.
Well, I will just say, there are clues in the breakdown of the kit. I'm sure people have seen that the tail is a separate plug, the nose is a separate plug, but unfortunately, the wings are not extendable to make night fighters. It's a regret of mine that we can't do night fighter variants. But when people start saying, "Well, don't worry, it's only a new tail, a new nose, and new wings," you sort of have to stop them and say, "Guys, rewind."
You're just saying there's a fuselage in common.
Yes, yeah. Oh, and the engines. There's 100 parts in the engines, but unfortunately, it's a no-go. One thing I should say is the Night Fighter variant was a dream of mine. the guys at Elvington, there's a great project going on there. WS788, I believe the serial is. Graham will kill me if it's not. He's restoring it, and we went up there and got to take off all the panels, look at the engine. It's great piece of research material. I said to him, I'm really sorry we're not doing the Night Fighters though. But as a little nod on that decal sheet, you'll see there's a little decal below the sort of top right, and it says no Jaffa cakes left in this vehicle overnight, because that's a little decal they have on the access panel. It's very, very small, but it's a little Easter egg as a nod to the guys at Elvington.
I will have to get my glasses out to look at that one because I mean the decals are typically cartographed. They're excellently produced. They're really good color density, perfect register as we've come to expect. But as with pretty much all cartograph decals as well, you can read them if you can magnify them enough. So okay, I'll have to. Maybe I'll get the macro lens for the above camera later.
It does mean there's nowhere to hide with stencils. You can't just make up a piece of text. Sometimes I wish you could.
Or do like they used to do and just sort of put a squiggle,
Yes.
I remember doing that when I was very young, trying to do joined up writing, and you just sort of squiggle and to make it look like your dad's.
There are more cases of that in the modelling industry than you might think. People just trying to get away with the stencils because sometimes you just can't see what they are. With the best will in the world, you just can't find out.
So Simon also says Biggin Hill was a big airbase in World War II, indeed. And Peter mentions that Revell is one of my favorite brands. They cover pretty much everything: planes, cars, tanks, ships, sci-fi, space, etc. And that's kind of one thing. I know you don't manage this area of the business, Luke, but we've also got the new Lamborghini, which I think is out now.
I believe so, yeah.
If not, it's imminent. If it's not on our shores already. So again, another brand new tooling. Revell, again, back to the American heritage, very well known for car models, still goes popular in the US for the Revell and Monogram toolings. So are you seeing some sort of seepage into the other areas? Is this across all the products, or are we just localized to the Luke effect in air and space?
I wouldn't say the Luke effect, a bit egotistical. But
you didn't coin it, so it's not. So.
I mean, cars for us have always been a really, really good seller. It's sort of one of the cornerstones of what we're known for. If you look back, easy to do on scale, mates, to 2020, the thing we've tooled the most of since then is cars. 9 new tools for cars since 2020, not including sort of kid-based toys. So I think that's mainly because it does so well in Europe, but particularly the US. Car modelling is huge in the US compared to aircraft and space, and obviously being across both markets, it'd be silly not to be covering them off. They are sort of a guaranteed money maker. As grubby as that seems, as a business we do have to make money. But
people sometimes forget that.
Yes, they do. But I get it. It's people's hobby as well. It's my hobby, so they don't want to talk about the money most of the time. But yeah, 9 new tools since 2020, huge in the US, and also the licensing opportunities are massive as well, and sort of the commercial aspects of that. You can do things like Stranger Things that we've been doing with the range, but also partnering with Lamborghini and McLaren. The brand appeal is a big thing, so you're sort of piggybacking off of them. People know what a Lamborghini is; they don't need to know what Revell is as much. They just want to build a Lamborghini. So
that's one thing that Revell have always seemed to be really good at, because of course you have the Star Wars stuff. You got Star Trek as well, still producing things like the Voyager and things. So yeah, how is that different from how it was at Airfix? Because we don't seem to see as much from Airfix in the way of, let's call them franchises like Stranger Things, and getting that. You've just released the Lich King from World of Warcraft, for instance. Huge game. You've done World of Tanks, with some of the 35th scale vehicles. So is that just something that's endemic at Revell, or your legal department especially honed at that?
Yeah, I think it's just something we've always done. We are definitely more focused on the toy industry as well, which helps. I think people forget that obviously Revell of old was purely a model kit company, but Revell today is sort of a overarching brand with lots of subdivisions within. There's model kits. Obviously, I work within a subdivision of that where I'm aircraft, space, and helicopters. But we also do RC toys. We do 3D puzzles, book nooks. The list goes on and on and on. Advent calendars as well in Germany. So, and as such, we have more opportunities to do licenses because quite often, if you get a license, you need minimum number of sales. That helps if you've got the ability to bring out multiple products. So, we might have a license for that covers model kits. It also covers RC and puzzles, for example. So we're able to get that minimum return pretty quickly. But in terms of our thinking, we're definitely more sort of towards the less of the enthusiast market for model making. As a wider company, this is, and more into the sort of toy world, where licenses carry so much more importance generally.
Yeah.
Obviously, when I say not so much in the enthusiast market, in my world, we're purely enthusiasts and obviously trying to bring new people into the hobby. But as a wider organisation, generally, we're more toy orientated, and that comes with licensing.
Okay, thanks. Adrian says, don't you have to make a minimum run on kits to make it profitable?
Yes, definitely. We're not pouring in the 100,000 plus to just sell a few. So when we come to do a kit, we always look at, we have to hit a certain percentage number within the first 3 years of return. I won't tell you what that is, otherwise I will be killed. Generally, it needs to pay back itself within a year. I think that's pretty common across industries. And then in terms of profits, it needs to make a certain amount. So when we do that, we're looking at how many releases can we get out within a 3 to 5 year period, and how many of each are we going to sell. So, when we do a limited edition or first edition of the Meteor, for example, that edition is limited to 3,000 pieces, but the tooling isn't limited to 3,000 pieces because we won't have made the money back. So, there will be subsequent releases. I won't go any further on that, but obviously we have to make the money back and make more money is the idea of the business. That's why I get paid. That's why the lights are on at home. So, and
of course, the more successful a particular tooling is, the more faith that the company, the leadership have that, well, okay, you're making good decisions. We'll go with your advice in the future. We'll get more releases which are successful. You want to sell, when you're doing 3,000 or 5,000 limited, you want them all to sell out so that, okay, we know this is a good solid product. We can retool it in various different forms. And, I think when people criticize odd little bits of something, they kind of forget that, well, if you don't kind of support a release, and it's because, it's not the scheme that I want. It's like, well, if you want the scheme, as you said, aftermarket is there. I've never truly understood it myself because I've never been limited by, what's in the box in terms of, if I've got a cool scheme that I want to do, I'll do that scheme, and just get the bits that I need to do that scheme, But if you don't buy the kit, then that scheme might never happen because it won't be reimpressed. It's not a successful release. Okay, we'll move to something that is successful. So at the end of the day, companies exist to make money. Now, if they reinvest that, they can make more money, which is, what we want. But fundamentally, if nobody buys any of the kits, then the kit companies don't exist anymore, right? That's happened to Revell in the past. It's happened to Airfix in the past. It's happened to several other companies making excellent kits. If people don't buy them, they don't make any money. End of company. So
exactly, yeah. We rely on people buying our kits, and we can only do so much. We can do a lot in terms of making the quality good and putting the word out there for what we do. but obviously we can't take it for granted. We can't rely on the Revell name. We have to go out and compete with the more and more companies each year for model kits. So that's what we're trying to do.
So moving back to your sort of sphere of expertise and the air and space, I was hoping that I'd have the SLS Artemis. I don't for various reasons, but of course Airfix did an SLS Artemis this year, 144 scale. You've done essentially exactly the same, a 144 scale SLS Artemis. Now Airfix have a very good, depending on your opinion of social media, a very good or very persistent, let's say, PR department. So it's out there a lot, and it made a lot of noise about the Artemis. You guys released it, and I think I didn't. And if I wasn't a retailer, I probably wouldn't have known until Telford, and I'd seen some.
Yeah.
So very different kind of approach on that. I would have liked to have had the Revell one to be able to compare. I've built the Airfix one, and I'd have liked to have had the direct comparison. Fortunately, you can't plan these things sometimes. But was that something that was, I guess, already in the books when you joined? And
it was. I joined and was told we're doing the SLS before it goes to the moon, which put me in a slightly awkward position because obviously I'd been involved over at Airfix. So yes, but the thing to say is that obviously when you look at Saturn V and Space Shuttle, it's not just one brand did it and then everyone left it alone. Yeah. It's not every year that someone lands on the moon. So we sort of had to do it. And you look back at sort of Revell's history, we've always been known for doing space kits. So it's sort of a bit of a no-brainer that Revell wanted to do it when I joined. One of the challenges,
like having seen both kits in production, that must have been quite a bizarre experience.
Yes, a bit strange, definitely. As I say, a bit of an awkward situation with it. It's not where I wanted to be. I'd rather be a clean slate and not treading on toes. But hey, at the end of the day, the business wanted it, and there's a clear business case for it. In terms of the sort of marketing side of it, ultimately, I think we're just a bit stretched in terms of what we do. As I say, Revell does an awful lot under one brand name, and only has a small marketing team. So trying to focus attention on any one product means that other things are losing out. We don't have the advantage of having lots of different Facebook pages all focusing on a very specific subset, which is maybe a weakness of ours in that sort of world. There's only so many shows I can go on and talk about SLSs, and that only has a certain amount of reach. Social media has far more. So I think ultimately we were just a bit stretched, and so it probably didn't get the attention that I'd have wanted it to have got, and the same, the rest of Revell would have wanted it pushed more, but there's only so much resource within the team. But
you guys have started to do you have a YouTube channel now, and you started doing I think it's monthly, isn't it?
Generally monthly, depending on how often they schedule it. But yes, so that's one thing. Again, when I joined, having this, I think I alluded to it earlier, where we have this sort of more corporate feel was what was said to me, that we were a bit aloof as a company, not engaging with the customers, especially more in the UK or English language speaking world. There's a temptation as a German company with German speaking employees. It's quite hard to then reach out and branch out. Luckily, obviously, I'm a English-speaking UK employee, so I can sort of bring our perspective over to the continent a bit, and try and push some of that engagement. And it's sort of grown into its own thing now. So obviously the first couple of shows I think were quite heavily focused on aircraft, but now we've got the other colleagues speaking to Alex, who, not yourself, another Alex, who hosts it. And the idea is just to keep people abreast of what we're doing, and also put faces to the company. It's always nicer when you can see people are passionate about what they're doing, and see the thought process behind why we've chosen to do a certain model or why we've chosen a certain scheme, etc. So quite happy with that, and we can also build what we're doing.
So if you guys haven't seen the Revell YouTube channel, just go on to. I'll actually put a link to it in the video description below. But go and check it out. Subscribe. I actually quite like it. It's got a very. So I've worked with a lot of Germans, a lot of German companies. I used to work for a Japanese company, as I'm sure you know, that was based. It's European based in Germany. So I used to go over there a couple of times a year for 5 years. Then I worked with German distributors for another 5. So it's very German in its approaches. I think a lot of the German colleagues I've worked with in the past, they like things to be perfect. Very very German kind of engineering principle of getting it right, and so they always assume their English is much worse than it actually is, and usually their English is absolutely excellent. And even where it's a bit patchy, you can absolutely understand what the intent and message is. So I like the fact that it's kind of more it almost has a homely feel. It feels very honest. So yeah, go and check that out. I wouldn't say it's polished. I think it's personable, which I think actually is preferable.
Yeah. There's definitely ways we can improve the output we're doing, but I think the monthly show does what it's meant to do. So we can build upon that by carrying on with it, but also putting out other sort of forms of video that are interesting to modelers. So something we're looking at in the future. I always try. You said it's sort of homely. We try and dial down the Eurovision feel of it sometimes as well. The presenters in between singers, it can sometimes feel like we're doing that. So we have to edit it out. But yeah.
No, I think it's more power to that. I think it's good. So a couple of other things. So going again back to your wheelhouse, one of the things that was on display, or a couple of things that were on display at Telford. One, of course, was the Hunter. So the Hunter T7.
Yes, T7/T7A. Yeah.
It's apologies, sort of it's the wrong era for me. It's not got Balkenkreuz and splinter camo. So I actually do have the original single seat. I think it's the FGA 9, something like that.
Yeah, we've done a 9 and a 6 as well. So
yeah, so I've got the original 32nd scale one that Revell put out. I think that was in mid-90s.
1997. Yeah.
Okay. Again, sort of that glory renaissance of Revell, if you like, from my point of view. And you had the T7 on display at Telford. Looked great. All the detail in the cockpit, it was there. Now, I've heard a little bit about the story about this, but just for those of you out there who don't know this, this has basically been redesigned from the ground up, right?
Yeah. So it was meant to be a quick win, which hasn't turned into such a quick win. But So essentially, the Hunter was designed on CAD, the original single seat release, and between 1997 and now, the CAD has gone missing. So it was stored on a physical drive somewhere, and over the years, it's just been lost to time, unfortunately. We have a huge set of archives in Germany, so it's somewhere in there. I'm sure there's a disc or multiple discs that hold the secret to the single-seat Hunter CAD. But by the time we find them, it'd be far too late because we've since had to elect to reverse engineer, essentially. So for those that don't know, the two-seat will build on the single-seat. So essentially, we'll swap the nose. It was designed in such a way that you could basically interchange between them. So it would be a new tail cone and a new nose. But obviously, a model kit designed in 1997 It wasn't based on a 3D scan. So there are some minor, and we're talking minor discrepancies between the 3D scan that we've since done of a real aircraft and the original kit. So you have to design in between the two. You have to design it to fit the current kit, but also match the proportions and dimensions of the real airplane. So what we had to do was get the pieces from the single-seater kit, put them together in sub-assemblies, 3D scan them, and then design the nose plug that you see on the screen there, and also the tail cone to fit those pieces, which is a lot of work, a lot of manual work that we hadn't anticipated at the start of the project.
Yeah, so here you can see there's a couple of CAD renders about how this all fits together. I mean, in one sense, I would have thought this is actually more work to kind of engineer something, reverse engineer, or rather design a new part to then go on reverse engineer parts than it would be just to start from scratch, right?
Yes, yeah. There's definitely an element of that. I think anyone that's ever taken over a work colleague's project halfway through will sympathise. It's quite often you just think, I'll just start again. Obviously, from our side, the tools are already there. So from a commercial sense, it wouldn't make sense to start again. But from a designer's perspective, I'm sure if I'd have offered, you can just draw the whole thing again if you want, he'd have bitten my hand off, really. But we lined the bits up. Yeah, we got there in the end, and it's a really, really nice cockpit. Obviously, externally, we were very keen to sort of match the level of detail on the rest of the kit, because you can't have a sort of 1997 detailed fuselage and then go into a super riveted nose. It would look very odd, a bit of a mishmash. Luckily, the Hunters were pretty state-of-the-art back in the day, so they've sort of kept quite well in terms of perspective, sort of people's opinion on the level of rivets and panel lines. Is very fine and recessed, thankfully. So we've been able to sort of work our modern magic on it. We've got first test shots arriving in the next couple of weeks, probably over the Christmas period. Unfortunately, I was hoping to get them before, but means that in the new year we'll start fitting them and seeing if there's any issues. So
again, you can see the CAD renders here of the detail in the cockpit, and the example built up at Telford looked fantastic. So
and those were 3D prints at Telford. So hopefully when the tooling comes, it will be even more impressive. One thing to mention before we go onto the box art is that it's a T7 and a T7A. So non-hunter nerds might not know what a T7A is, but essentially it was used to train Buccaneer air crews. So the left-hand side of the instrument panel was fitted out with Buccaneer instruments instead, and so we've included 2 instrument panels as a result. And then the box art that you'll see shows a T7A's training Buccaneer crews over the sort of Lossiemouth area.
Nice. Yeah, and again, fantastic box art for this kit here. I always think that if you've got a subject which is, again, for me, the Hunter was my father's kind of era of aircraft. He loved the Hunter. For me, it was like, it doesn't have a couple of big Tamansky turbofans in there ripping the air apart. So it's got this gentle whistle. So this isn't really my bag. But again, I think if you can see box art and be inspired, I'm a modeler at heart, so I like making things regardless of what they are. The Sea King, I think, was a great example, from that day. The enthusiasm of all of you guys at Airfix and the way it was all presented got me excited to make something that I had no interest in from a personal point of view before that. And I think this is kind of the same. You look at that detail, knowing little details like that it was used to train Buccaneer crews, I think is more interesting to me than just training another Hunter pilot. So again, for me, this is all my personal opinion. You guys might have very different views. But stuff like this is all stuff that can swing my opinion on, am I going to part with the dollars to buy this or not? to something that, is like, Hunter T7. If I just read it or saw it on the net, actually seeing this and then, knowing some of those details, it's just like, oh, well, actually, it gets the brain going and you kind of think of things that you could do with it. So,
yeah, I think the Hunter, again, my opinion, the Hunter is the most beautiful jet. I think it's just lovely. But we'll agree to disagree on that one, Alex.
No, I think you're right. It is a beautiful aircraft, and actually, I think T7 there is a much more interesting aircraft from my eye than the regular Hunter. So, I mean, as I mentioned, I've got the 32nd scale, the original Revell Hunter. So it's not that I thought it was terrible. At that time, it interested me enough that I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm going to do this. And again, this has firmly put me on the side of, you know what? I think I might, yeah.
It's doing its job then. Selling kits.
We're just going. That's we're back onto Meteor shots. Back onto something that we'll come on to a little bit later. I want to just quickly whiz back here because another thing we saw at Telford, which is very much in my wheelhouse, is this, which is the 50mm cannon armed ME-262, the Pulksestora. And I believe, well, you tell us about it because this is a conversion, right?
Yeah, so new parts for an existing kit, definitely. Mm-hmm. So it's based on the single seat 262 that's, I believe, 2016 tooling or around that era. And we had previously done a single seat, the A1 and the A2 as well, and also the Night Fighter, the two-seater. So when I joined Revell, one of the things we were looking at was what have we got in the recent catalogue that could, maybe have a second or third release that is in the tooling bank that maybe has been forgotten. This one isn't such a case. It's what can we do with limited investment, new parts? So Radu, who designed the original 262, said, well, I always wanted to do the U4 version, which I said, great, let's do it. It's a single frame, which is nice from a budget perspective, and it makes a visually very, very different aircraft. It's like a narwhal almost with this big thing sticking out the front. It instantly grabs the eye. People don't just think, oh, it's one or two extra parts. It's a whole new nose with the cannon there as well that can be fully displayed. So a bit of a quick win for us, and a really, really interesting sort of airframe. I think there were only ever two made.
It's kind of insane, right?
Oh yeah. It's proper, last days of the Reich. Do whatever we can to try and stay alive, basically.
Yeah.
It's a tank gun, essentially, and I think the recoil, if you fired it, you lost something like 20 knots of airspeed because of the recoil, which is just crazy.
So this is like the German A10 concept.
Yes. Yeah.
But I mean, I think the other thing that this does, because I've built the 1/32 scale Revell ME-262, but not the 2016 version.
Okay, I was going to say the older one.
Yeah, which is, I don't want to say horrible. It's challenging for sure. And I wasn't really, the 2016 tooling had completely skipped me by. So this actually coming out has kind of also, if you like, alerted me to the fact that kit exists. So it's kind of two bites of the cherry with the same, with one release from my point of view.
Yeah, I think strangely, from our side, the single seat release is quite rare. I think we did a very limited number. I'm not entirely sure why that was. It, by all rights, it should be what we call an evergreen, so it sits in the catalogue forever and ever. But whenever I do a kit that's building on a previous release, you have to buy a couple, or hopefully find some in the archive. If you can't do that, you have to go on eBay and get them. You soon realise how rare they are when you're having to spend your own money on them to get enough reference kits for things like this and some of the 26 releases that are yet to come. A few £100 gone, and you're thinking, oh, okay, right, maybe it is time for a re-release.
Hopefully you can expense that. So.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So the other one that I kind of accidentally flicked onto there, one that hasn't been really talked about, is another Luftwaffe subject. This little beast.
Yes. So I think last Nuremberg, so January last year, January this year, sorry, we showed off a 7-second 109 was due to come. And it's something that's sorely missing from our range. So one of the big things I've tried to push when I got to Revell is that we need to invest in both ends of the market. So Meteor is a prime example of an enthusiast product, but we're sorely lacking in terms of 70-second fighters, 9.99 price points, things that will get people back into the hobby if they've left after doing it as a kid or a teenager. Maybe the stereotypical journey is your kids have left home, you've got more money in the bank now, you're looking for a hobby, more disposable income, more time, all that sort of stuff. Or looking for a kit to do at the weekend with your son or your daughter, whatever it may be. That sort of stereotypical journey. That's how we sort of generally look at it. So it seemed mad to me that Revell, a German company, didn't have a 7-second 109E in their tool bank, or not one of any significance from the last 50 years. And so it seems like a no-brainer to start development on it. So this is still a work in progress for anyone that's any 109 nuts that are going to tell me it's missing anything, covering my back there. But it should be finished early January. So we're sort of adding on final details and stuff and working out some sort of smaller shape issues. And we're trying to sort of market it at the middle of the market. We're not going a full special hobby Edward route where it's 70-second, but for real enthusiasts. And it's not purely for the beginner like Airfix starter sets. It's in the middle. So it can be done for both. And I think that's the key. So we'll probably do multiple releases with this. On the screenshot you see there, you've got an engine. We'll probably do a standard version that will probably not come with any internal gubbins in the engine compartment because, who really needs that if you're only looking at a weekend build. And then a more enthusiast one, a couple pounds more expensive, a couple euros more expensive, I should say, that will come with drop tanks and bombs and all the extras and possibly an extra scheme as well in the box. So looking at how we can market it in different ways, it's getting harder and harder to not take an extreme position in the model market as it is in the rest of life, I suppose. You've either got to be super simple or super complex, and we're trying to meet in the middle somewhere with this one.
Yeah, so there we go. I mentioned different scales, and 70-second scale, not so much. Well, here you are, guys.
It's from a business case. It's quite hard to convince the bean counters to spend the money because it's obviously investment, but you have to sell an awful lot more in terms of sheer quantity of these than you would a Meteor, for example. But I think it's important as one of the bigger brands in the hobby that we try and cater for all scales and all sort of skill levels as well. And, if we don't nurture that beginner side of it, then in 20, 30, 40 years' time, we won't have the enthusiast side of it. So there's always balancing the immediate reward of investment and payback with the sort of nurturing the hobby as a whole, which can be a hard sell sometimes, but hopefully we're striking a balance there. That's the T7A cockpit there, Alex. So you just on the left, you see the dials there are slightly different from the back.
Yeah, I got them. I downloaded them and then put them all in one folder, and unfortunately not. I thought they might be like Hunter and then, a... no.
No, that would be too simple.
Come on, German company. I expected it. So
Yes. Yeah.
although all the German companies that I work for, they would have all just had numbers.
Yes. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, the 70-second scale. I mean, the starter kit thing for me is a big one because certainly from a retail point of view, when somebody comes in exactly that situation that you've described, is coming back into the hobby, or I'd like something, for my kids to do that isn't a screen. I always recommend Airfix starter kits because they're going to have a good experience with them. So, and they contain most of the stuff you need. Yeah, maybe you need a pair of snips or whatever, you can sell those extra little bits, but, the actual main thing, it's all there. The paints might work, but that then is the tinder that starts the fire, if you like.
Yeah.
And it would be great to have, a broader range from different manufacturers. I know Italeri do their model sets, but they're pretty expensive. I think they're like around the £30 mark, which is, let's face it, more than most people are particularly looking to spend if they're just getting back. It's just like, I'm just thinking of, I just want something to do for the weekend. 10, 12, sort of £15 is a kind of ballpark what they're willing to spend. So yeah, it would be great if we're Revell, we're going to get in to do a new series of these, because I know you've got some of the ones. I mean, you've already got the 262, P47, P51, Spitfire from like the 90s, which are still decent kits.
Yeah, the Spitfire itself is from 2015, I think.
Okay.
But there are a few in that range that, we need to be careful with our assortment. And so over the next couple of years, I'll start weeding out a couple that are maybe not giving the best experience to sort of where the market puts those kits. So, the P51, for example, is one that I'm keen to consign to the archive, the 70-second one, and replace. There are some bread and butter kits that have maybe been run a few too many times. I think our 262 is quite a good model actually, but is getting a bit tired because it's 1997 tooling, I believe.
I've built that kit probably more than any other single model kit. I must have built like, I don't know, 10 dozen.
That's good. I think the clear parts are starting to show their age a bit. So, right. Going with the oldest kits or the worst experiences first and replacing those, or a like for like replacement.
Well, I think Travis has a suggestion there. That's shocking.
Well, and this is the thing, for every bad kit, there's no guarantee that someone will come back to the brand or the hobby as a whole. So it's something we take quite seriously, or I definitely take quite seriously, is that you could lose a customer for forever. So we need to be conscious of that when it comes to what we're bringing out, and it's something we're working on, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, again, from a personal point of view, so my dad, sort of, who got me into the hobby when I was too young, but as a lot of fathers want to get their children into their hobby earlier than they really probably should. I remember doing the Revell. It's a really odd kit. I think it's like 196 scale or 69 scale or something weird. The V2 and launcher.
Okay, yeah.
And I remember that from, it must have been sometime in the 70s, I guess. And I remember that being the most painful experience. I was just, literally crying with, and that put me off Revell for a long time. And my dad was not a Revell fan because, of course, it was the 70s. So, that's all he had. So, yeah, I think that whole experience piece of it is a big thing. And I think one of the things, well, I know that I mentioned to you and a lot of people have mentioned to me, is the whole, the thing I think that Airfix had to be applauded for is the honesty policy. Is what is inside this box. Is it is this TA152 from 1959 or is it from 2025? That kind of thing. you have thoughts, plans on that for the future?
Yeah, so we are introducing or reintroducing the Classics label. So it's something we had quite a while ago, but we've sort of revived it. And so it doesn't substitute the weeding of the assortment. There are some kits that don't warrant being called a classic and being in the range. There are some that are unique in modelling, in that we might be the only people that tool that aircraft at that scale. It might be a really good kit, might be great value, even if there's another Mosquito out there, we have one in the range, it sells well for us. But we want to be honest, then we have this classic label that we're going to add to the boxes essentially. So it started appearing products at the end of this year, but as with anything, it sort of take a while to roll out to sort of newer products. But we'll have sort of a dedicated sub-range of classic. It won't mean they rotate in and out like vintage classics do. Some of them will sit in the catalogue, but it's an attempt to essentially be more transparent about what's in the box, and show people, this is a slightly older kit. It still has its place in modelling, but to make people aware essentially what it is. And we'll use the QR code that we're introducing on the boxes as well, that will link to other information about the history of that model kit and things like that. So it's something that I spoke with you at the start of my time at Revell, and also a lot of others about this sort of reboxing policy and trying to be more transparent and upfront about what's in there. Not having a kit from the 1950s in the same packaging as one from 2025. So again, it will take a little while to roll out, but it's something we are definitely sort of aware of and trying to remedy.
And I think that was also one question here that kind of goes in with that. John Corden says, does Revell see any value in the Monogram name, and could they see re-releasing the kits under the Monogram name instead of being boxed as Revell?
Monogram is something that gets discussed within our R&D meetings on a monthly basis.
Imagine
what we do with it, because we have this piece of IP, this brand name that's currently sat there doing nothing, because a lot of Monogram kits are now in Revell boxes. So it's how we use Monogram. We did speak about when the classics discussion was coming up, how do we box older kits in a sort of transparent way? Could we use the Monogram label? It was sort of felt that actually, Monogram should be held back for something slightly different. What that is, we're not entirely sure yet. So it just didn't feel like the right thing to be doing to palm off the older kits to Monogram. So I think it will make a return in the next couple of years. In what form, I can't say at the moment, because I don't know. But there's definitely room within the market for it, and it sort of helps an issue I sort of said about earlier, where we have all these sub-brands under one name, which makes it hard to give attention to everything. We're under Revell, but we do so much. Monogram could help to alleviate that somewhat, and so that's where we're leaning towards, is being able to sort of subdivide ourselves a bit. But Monogram could be a premium label. It could be the other end. It could be a beginner label. We're just sort of working it out at the moment.
So I guess the other side of the whole, honesty and the reboxing old stuff is one thing, but also boxing other manufacturers' plastic. So I know Revell do a lot with ICM. And a lot of people have come into the shop in the past couple of years and said, I like Revell, I did this kit. And I was like, yeah, that's actually an ICM tooling. So, don't be thinking that if you buy that Revell kit, it's going to be the same as that. You just need to, what are you thinking of? And then obviously that's my value add as the modeler in the model shop, to be able to give that advice. But obviously a lot of people out there aren't in that position. A lot of people don't know about ScaleMates. A lot of people will say, if you're in this community and like, we'll just check ScaleMates. A lot of people don't know about ScaleMates. Outside of our niche, if you like, the normal people, what it is.
Are you calling us not normal, Alex?
We're special.
Yes, yeah.
But I've noticed actually I had some Italieri kits in the shop the other day, and one was another Lamborghini actually, but it actually had on the box plastic components by Fujimi, and it's the first time I think I've seen on an Italieri kit, the origin of, which I think is actually good for them, because I think you look at that and think, it's going to be, it's Fujimi kit, I'll be good. I'll be good then.
I think from my side, when it comes to range selection, I'm not a huge fan of reboxing other kits, other manufacturers' kits. Sometimes there's a business case for it. I think wherever possible, it's easier when we have the investment available to us. Keeping it simple and having our own kits in the range is easier for everyone. It also helps when we can't buy in kits and make the margin we need to. So, it makes the decision for us. So I'm a big fan of keeping it Revell wherever possible. There's a place for, and we have a good relationship with ICM and other manufacturers as well. But obviously we don't make the same margin on those products as we would if they were Revell tools, because everyone needs to take their cut. I think where Revell will do well is if we keep on the trajectory we are. Consistency will get us to where we want to be. Obviously we've done Meteor, we've got SLS and a couple other products coming through. Those are the very start of the journey. And it won't change people's opinion of Revell overnight. What we need to do is release 2, 3, 4 products in the aircraft range every year for the next 5, 10 years. And, you pointed out the Airfix journey. Look at what they've done. That's how you achieve it, is just being consistent, growing, getting better. It makes it harder to have a consistent message as a brand or a experience as a brand if you're reboxing other people here and there. People aren't sure what you're getting. So I think ultimately, when it comes to my philosophy behind picking subjects, wherever possible, we should exploit the huge back catalogue that Revell, Monogram, and other companies that we've sort of bought over the years have, but in the right way. And that's the key. Just because no one else makes that, we have a tool from 1970, let's bring it out. That's not the thinking we want. As you say, there are some real golden generations of Revell kits, mid to late 90s, 2010, around there, the sort of a few years either side of that. There were some really, really good kits, unique to Revell, and still not kitted by anyone else. Look at those, keep them in the range wherever they sell. Rely on the money makers like the airliners that just keep pumping out, because you put different liveries on them, people keep buying them. So I think in terms of reboxing, definitely wherever we can, we should try and be as transparent as possible, when putting a label on made in this country or made by this company is always a good thing. Hard to sometimes convince the company. It's a battle I'm having. Sure. But that problem isn't there if we don't rebox. If we make it purely Revell, and that's the hope, that we can invest enough to bring enough products out that we don't have to rebox other people's things. We can simply keep making money off our own IP.
Sure. There's a couple of questions here that have come out. And one of those kind of alludes to the whole consistency question. So quite a nice one. What is Revell's attitude? And I know you can only speak from a limited part of this, but to releasing big kits that are now attracting huge prices due to rarity, e.g. the 1/32 Heinkel 111P1, and then another related one, which is, it would be cool if Revell retooled all those famous 70s 1/32 scale kits like the Raiden and KI61 and UP40, and I mean, there's a couple of years' work for you.
Yeah, keep me busy.
So a couple of different questions there, but kind of around the same sort of thing about the re-releases of some of those, as we've just seen the Arado AR196, which was again very well received. Good to see it out now. Although I bought mine from eBay sometime this year, so fortunately it was a single float version, so I don't feel too chagrined. And I got it for a good price. So. But it's good to see those kits that like that the 111 Heinkel HE111 that are commanding silly prices. Again, I'd love to see the ME262, because I missed that on the first round. And then the other one is the more classic ones, like the ME262 that I did.
I think so. On the first question about sort of re-releases of kits we have in the tool bank, it's definitely something we have on our radar, and using the second-hand market as a guide can be quite helpful. You might not realise something's rare until you see how much it's going for on eBay or any other auction site. And you think, oh, well, why haven't we brought it back out? There might be a good reason. Tools might have been damaged at some point or lost or sold. But generally, that most of the time we have them in the archive somewhere, or the tool bank. So in the case of the Heinkel, it's definitely on the radar for release in the next couple of years. Can say that pretty confidently. It's about managing the range, about how many products you bring out at certain price points. You sort of mentioned about this year with the 109 from Airfix, Meteor from Revell, and the Hampton from ICM, all within about a month of each other. Obviously, we can't control other companies, but where it's in our own control at Revell, if we were bringing out all the 30-second range that we've ever done of sort of big aircraft, Heinkels and other huge things that would take up our whole room, we'd be stupid to bring them out in the same year. So what we have to do is spread them out so that people's wallets can recover and they can buy the next one. That's always the hope, So things like that, there's no barrier to us re-releasing, apart from a bit of R&D work, decal work, construction work to bring it up to modern day standards. But yeah, I have no qualms about bringing them back. And I'm sure in the next few years, you'll see quite a few of these sort of fan favourites coming back. As I say, it's about weeding out the kits that maybe have had their time in the assortment and bringing back classics, really ploughing that back catalogue and curating the catalogue that we have now, the current range, so that we have a good mix and we're giving the best experience to the modeler.
Yeah, excellent. So James Conahan asked a very similar question that I think we've answered there, but I just wanted to acknowledge, James, that I should have read that out at the same time as those other two, but it's very much, I think, covered there. The other one that I actually meant to go on before that question was, again, as I mentioned, with consistency and then talked about something completely different, is this one. Are Revell considering the situation of the price variation with smaller kits where aircraft are quite reasonable, where the 1/72nd armour is less so? And again, because you're only the half of that equation, I realise it's difficult, but I do see this in the retail. Obviously, I stock the all of the Revell, like 72nd scale fighters, the 272 and stuff. They are, they're quite nice because they're small on the shelf. Like you say, they're the smallest box you do. So you can get, they stack nicely. They're a good price point, and they're a decent kit. Somebody's going to have a reasonable experience with them. The 72nd scale armor in the same is basically double the price. Yeah. For something which is going to be actually probably slightly smaller, or thereabouts the same size, or slightly smaller on the bench, and that is a slightly different situation. I don't have as much of that in the shop because of that, because it doesn't sell as well, because it's it's taking up space that other things are. And again, as a range, how Revell are viewed in terms of consistency, is that something that you look at between the different departments? Do you have those kind of conversations?
Definitely. I mean, we're working to the same margin numbers, so ultimately we should come out about the same generally, and we're trying to standardize our price range a bit as well. So rather than jumping all over the shop 10, 11, 12, 17 pound price points, it's more going to be 10, 15, 20 and up in sort of more uniform blocks, which should bring that back into line, hopefully, where it's sitting maybe at what we would want to charge 17 for will drop to 15, and so everything will sort of fall into a more neatly arranged order. But we do sort of post-mortems on products as well, in that we go back and look at, well, this is what we thought it was going to make in terms of per product, what's the margin, this is actually what it made. And sometimes you'll find, actually, oh God, we've been charging far too much for that, and we're making too much money per product, but not selling enough of them as a result, because it's deemed too expensive or whatever it may be. Or, sometimes happens, oh God, we're selling that too cheap, we're not making enough money on it. So we do sort of have those conversations. The problem with managing the range in the way we do, where we're all quite isolated into our own sub-stacks, means that without that communication, differences can appear. So it's something that, when it's pointed out, as it has been, we sort of do meet as a team and see what we can do to bring them closer together. Won't happen overnight, but where we can, we try and be uniform across the range. But I'm not entirely sure about the armor discrepancy, so I'll try and find out why that is.
So, James, Alice in Ordnung. Indeed. Travis also mentions, and this is one that I personally would love to see again, the 32nd scale HU162. That is a really nice kit. I think it was the last Revell kit I bought before I kind of got more out of the scene because of, funny enough, children. And actually, it's a really nice kit even without aftermarket. So it would definitely be that would make a good first edition.
Yes, yeah, and things like that where maybe because it's more of an enthusiast product, it's better to do as a limited edition release, because you're not going to be selling, the same product for 5-10 years. You sort of get a huge wave of interest at the start, and it drops off pretty rapidly. It seems to be the case with those sorts of re-releases. So doing a special edition generally suits it better. So possibly.
Here's a good question. You kind of mentioned little bits of this already, but probably good to just address it straight up. Do Revell ever consider producing a new toolkit or a kit they have already done, or would it only be just a rerun of the old molds?
It's hard to convince the business sometimes to retool something, because quite rightly they might point out, well, we have one, and all these sort of softer factors. Well, it's a better experience for the modeler if we retool it. We can. It's things that financially are hard to justify at the outset, but we know that it would result in better sales because the brand would be perceived in a better light. People, I suppose
it's kind of the Spitfire. I would always bring up the Spitfire example to a bean counter in that. It's just like, well, yeah, how many new tooled Spitfires are there every single year in every scale? And they sell. Yeah. And it's just like, just because there exists a kit of something doesn't mean there isn't a reason to bring it out. It's just you have to have that business case for each individual one, don't you? And you have to. I'll use the example of that TA152. Anybody that buys that kit, I don't know if it's actually in the catalogue at the moment, but it shouldn't be. And anybody who buys it will not have a good experience. It doesn't fit together well. Yeah, it's a 1/72nd scale TA152 in name. It doesn't really kind of look like that. I don't know that there are many kits of it in 72nd scale. So is there a reason to buy, to retool it? Well, certainly it would have that, like you say, initial peak of interest. Is it going to sell huge amounts? Probably not, because it was a fairly niche aircraft, in a niche kind of area, in a niche hobby. So,
well, yeah, this goes back to the question about retooling stuff, 30-second stuff from the 70s as well. Stuff from that time period, model kit companies could produce whatever they wanted. It was going to sell. It was going to make the money back generally. So you saw more and more niche subjects that you just couldn't do today generally. So that's one of the things. Some tools just can't be replaced because the interest isn't there as a subject. So there are other cases where we might have a tool that's on the cusp. something from the 80s that I want to replace as a modeler, but the business is saying, well, why? It still builds as a model, and we go back to sort of the intangibles, things that are sort of hard to put your finger on, but it's new, people will buy it. Refreshing the tooling, things like the 109 P51 Spitfires that will sell forever and more. You do have to replace them every now and then, because otherwise you run into the brand image problem. Yes, you can keep pumping them out, but people won't think the brand is any good. So you do have to replace it and look after your customers in that way. So,
Now, not a question that you can answer specifically, Luke, but Simon says, how many 135th scale armor models does Revell do? Simon, they do quite a lot.
Yeah, at least 2. Maybe more.
Especially if you're looking for German subjects, a lot of German post-war stuff. In fact, I just got into the shop last week some Raketen Jagdpanzer. So 1950s, looks like an APC with a tow missile mounted on it, because that's basically what it was. They do Unimogs and the German Wiesel and all kinds of stuff. So Leopard 2, they ICM box that with the ICM crew. So they do a lot of 135th scale armor, and yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. Your experience may vary. Peter says, thanks, Luke, for the impact you're having as part of Revell that seems to be reinvigorating themselves.
No,
and
thank you. Yeah. I won't get out of the doorway if you keep inflating my ego like that. So,
well, I think I've been critical of Airfix before. I've been critical of, and specifically Hornby. I've been critical of Revell before, but I think when companies, show that they're listening and they start to do good things, you can't just hit people with a stick. You also need to say, that's great when they're doing great things. And I think credit where credit is due, and that's how consumers give useful feedback to manufacturers, right? They buy the products, they tell them when they're doing things wrong, and they tell them when they're doing things right. It's not rocket science. It's a bit like bringing up children or training dogs. You don't. If you just hit a dog with a stick, one day it will turn around and bite you, or it will run away. Rightly so.
And that's why I've done a real push to engage more with the audience, as wearing the blue Revell top here, going to Telford obviously, and a lot of smaller shows across the country, because that's where our customers are, and it's important to get that feedback, to listen, and obviously as the years go on, they can see that we're implementing it. So obviously it doesn't happen overnight, and people get frustrated, and it's never a smooth journey. It's not going to be trending upwards all the time. There'll be a few dips in the road, as any person at work can attest to. But we'll get there, and we're trying, and that's what matters, I suppose. So.
Yeah, well, I think that has to be called out. I think So Peter says, as a space nerd, I know the SLS is likely to be scrapped before it ever gets to the moon. I did think when you said that you had to release it before it went to the moon, as you said,
have forever.
Like that could be quite. Yeah, that's quite a wide window. But the more interesting part of the question is any plans for SpaceX or Blue Origin rockets, which I think that's a good question.
It's I would say, don't be such a pessimist, Peter. It's going to the moon. Ultimus 2 is due to launch in February, I think. So and it's stacked. So the rocket is going. Obviously, that orbits the moon. It's a big job to then build another rocket to put them on the moon. I don't think they've sorted out the lander yet. So that's quite a big hurdle. That was due to be SpaceX doing that. But we know what they're like. They can turn it around in a fortnight at the rate they go.
I'll believe that when I see it. So.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hoping it does. Just from a personal interest, I'm not old enough to remember anyone walking on the moon, and there's multiple generations that aren't. So I think everyone wants to see it happen. We've been promised this new space age for a while, and fingers crossed. When it comes to SpaceX and Blue Origin, it's been on the radar, definitely. The problem is licensing. Getting the permission to do them is proving tricky. Things like Falcon 9, the sort of workhorse of the space industry at the moment, Falcon Heavy as well, and Spaceship, Starship, sorry. All of that, super, super interesting. Everyone at the company watches the launches just because it's fascinating. We're all sort of from an engineering design.
Everybody loves a big explosion, right?
Everyone loves a big explosion or a big rocket, or rocket being caught by pincers when it comes down. It's pretty.
Or what was it? An unplanned rapid disassembly.
Yes, pretty. But it's the licensing route that's causing problems. Just getting permission from the company to do it. They generally don't license. I think Tesla is the same. So it seems to be a trend with old Elon Musk's companies. But hey, never say never. It's something we'll definitely try. If we ever get offered it, we'll take it. Whether it be in plastic model form or brick system, click system, any of our sort of sub brands, I'm sure we'll try and cover it.
Would you consider going down the route of a spaceship vehicle that looked very much like it but wasn't licensed?
Well, this is where the sort of what I was saying with the Lamborghini, they do the marketing for you. You'll sell a lot more products because it says SpaceX on.
Yeah.
If I were just to call it hypercar rather than Lamborghini Revell, then we wouldn't sell as many. So they do the job, they do the heavy lifting, quite literally, for us by having the name and the logo on the box. So, I don't think it would be possible. But it's something we'll definitely do, Peter, hopefully.
Okay. Sophie says, will Revell be making a 1-to-1 scale tray of homemade biscuits, cakes, cookies, and muffins kit? that would be unique, wouldn't it?
It would be unique, yeah. I haven't got any plastic plans for that, but I can go to Sainsbury's and mock up one for you if you want.
Or maybe if it's German, it'll be a pretzel, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
I'm guessing, I think sadly, Sophie, that's a no.
Yes, unfortunately not.
Nice one from Simon. When does Revell broadcast the new tools for 2026?
I think the current plan, as far as I know, is Nuremberg. So checking calendar quickly. So the show opens on the 27th of January. So it's a Tuesday. And normally we'll coincide a YouTube video to go live about them for the model kit news. So, if not before, I am pushing to try and do it towards the start of the year. But unfortunately, with Christmas very nearly upon us, we might have run out of time to sort all of the logistics that go into that. So definitely the 27th, unless anything leaks out. We've been pretty good recently, unlike in previous years.
There we go. that's all you need to do. Give Elon Musk a couple of $1 trillion and he might change his mind. I'm sure he would. So
No, they're saying give me a couple $1 trillion and I'll definitely change my mind.
Trillion pennies?
Yeah.
Actually, that would still be a lot of money.
I'll still take it, yeah. I might have to call it a night soon.
No, we're due to wrap up in a couple of minutes anyway, Luke. So just a quick bit of consumer engagement can't be bad. I was happy to see Revell showing new stuff at IPMS Netherlands, for example, from Dutch Dave. That's always good to see. Last question from Emma Bird. Are we going to get more World War One, especially 1/72 scale?
Unfortunately, I haven't got anything on the current plans for 72nd World War One. But never say never for maybe not that scale, but in the future, possibly.
I think Rodin. There are a couple of companies that do quite a lot of World War One 72nd scale, so I can get why that might be less of a focus for you. But
also, going back to the returns on 72nd compared to 48th and 32nd, it's a lot easier to get the returns on bigger models nowadays. because the quantities aren't as high across the board. So, there are certain fixed costs with a mold, whether it be 72nd, 48th, or 32nd, but there's only so much you can charge for each of those scales. Generally the margins are a lot better on bigger models, which makes it more appealing to the company as a whole to invest in those.
Okay. Well, we will call it there. Let you get your sleep, because I know that you're probably going to be up in 4 hours?
4 hours, yeah.
So thank you, Luke, so much for coming on tonight and discussing all the things you've talked about, all of what's been happening at Revell, and some of the things that will be happening shortly in the coming 2026 new year, and maybe a couple of speculative question marks over some other things there. I think it's great to see the changes that are happening at Revell. I think it's great to engage the community, which is one thing. Actually putting that into action, I think I've made it fairly clear in the past I judge people and companies by their actions. We're seeing those actions. I think the Revell Gloster Meteor is a fantastic kit. I think it's, as I said, I think overall it's a better value proposition than the BF109. And not that I'm putting down the FX109 at all, because that is a fantastic kit. It is just, this is how blessed we are at the moment, in that we've got 3 A-grade releases, which you are looking at, a fraction of a percentage between them. I will say, Luke, one of the things that does strongly influence that decision is the fact that none of the plastic is warped in this kit. I'll just say that. So QC, I think, from Revell, we talk about consistency. Typically, when you get a Revell kit, it is sound.
I
know that the people that mentioned Revell. Yeah,
we're not perfect by any stretch, but one of the benefits we have is that the factory producing most of our stuff is in Poland, which is obviously only a drive over the border from Germany. So the German team can go visit the factory and do spot checks and have a closer working relationship. Yeah. So that works hugely in our favour. And, in terms of turnaround times for products, it gets moulded there, packed on a lorry. It can be in the warehouse within a day or two. So, we are very lucky to have that from a logistics point of view, but from a QC, it's great as well.
But so on that positive note, thank you, Luke. Have a great rest of your year. Have a fantastic Christmas. Thank you for everything that you've put into the stream tonight, but from a wider point of view into Revell and the changes that are coming. Really excited to see what's going to happen in 2026 and beyond. So thank you very much. And for the rest of you, thank you for joining tonight. Hope you found that enjoyable. If you've got any questions, any comments that you want to leave in the video description down below in the comments, please do. Obviously, Luke won't be able to answer them, but hopefully we can get something for you.
Please forward them on to me. Any feedback, any comments, always happy to reply. Maybe I can reply via you, Alex, and you can let them know what I say. So
as I say, I will put the link for the Revell YouTube channel. Do go and subscribe to that. It is quite nice to see. And we wish you all the best for the future. Okay, guys. Thanks very much. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everyone.